Thanks for clicking on this to watch it. Really appreciate you. Please like us and subscribe. Share us with all your friends. That'd be great. Got a really good talk today with Doc Canos. He is a Jiu Jitsu friend, a general surgeon. Tells us a little bit about life on the ship as a surgeon, which I thought was really cool. Also, he had a couple setbacks last year. He had COVID, describes the process of getting it. He was one of the early people, kind of the person that everybody said, hey, I know that one guy. He was kind of that guy. And then coming back from injuries and the martial arts and a big job. The whole thing is a great talk. Really enjoyed. Good friend of mine. Please make sure you're sharing, subscribing, and thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it.
Y'all ready for this?
Welcome to the DeVerna podcast, where we talk about business, life, and how to win it both.
How's your name supposed to be pronounced? Canos.
Yeah.
Rodolfo Canos. Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I just know you as Doc.
Everyone knows me as Doc.
Yeah.
Depends on what social circles people know me as.
Or Rodolfo.
Yes. If you're Brazilian.
Which is the Brazilian way.
If you're Brazilian, I'd be Rodolfo.
Because we met via Brazilians.
Yes.
And Canadians.
Yes.
Kind of. Yes.
But Dante calls me Doc. Everyone else calls me Doc.
Yeah.
Unless you're Brazilian.
Which I'm not.
Or
I don't know if you knew that.
Or if you just train with me, I'm just that, mother effer who does does half guard all the time.
Yeah. Well, not anymore.
Not anymore.
So we, got to know each other through the Jiu Jitsu stuff, but it's an interesting evolution, not just of the relationship, but just getting to know you because we started talking one day. And so my son Drake is in the Navy and he's on the USS Roosevelt, which right now I don't know exactly where they're at. I think they're floating somewhere near Guam. And he's on that ship for the duration because of COVID and the ship got COVID, blah, 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 blah. But you were you were in the Navy, right?
Yeah, I was in the Navy. So I did 2 stints in the Navy. So I did 3 years. So when I was in medical school, first 2 years in, I, did the normal student loans to pay for it. And then my brother's like, hey man, why don't you look into the military? Look at the Navy. Hey, I was in the Navy back in the day. Why don't you look into the Navy and see if they can pay for their last 2 years? So, applied for the scholarship, health professions scholarship program. I got it. They paid for my last 2 years and it's always a minimum of 3. So, I did my internship at Bethesda. It was Bethesda back in the day. Now it's Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, I think now. And then I did 2 years as, a GMO, which is kind of like a doc in the box for the Marines down in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And I did my time for God and country. I got out, started residency. And then once I got into residency, I was like, you know what? I could use a little extra, financial incentive because it's tough as a resident. You work your tail off and, they don't really pay you that much. I think when people work out the numbers, it's ridiculous. I think you make $5 an hour for the amount of hours that you work, considering what you get paid. I mean, you get paid decent money, but you do, you work every.
You work for it.
You work for it.
Yeah.
So I signed back up with the Navy. And I think it was called FAP, Financial Aid Program. And so they kind of gave me a stipend and a yearly grant. But because of that, I owed them 3.5 years. And so I was, at the second time I was in the Navy, I was at Camp Lejeune Naval Hospital. Okay. So that was kind of cool. I got to live in California for 3.5 years, which is always nice. And then towards the end, as I was getting out, I was stationed on the George H.W. Bush. So it was kind of like a gap. Called a gap billet because the general surgeon who was there was leaving because she was going to start her, we call it fellowship training. It's additional training in surgery after your 5 years of general surgery. So she was starting that. And then the surgeon that was going to take her place, she had to take her boards. So after we're done with residency program, we have to have certain certifications and, you have to be board certified, and it involves, taking a written test. And then once you pass your written test, then you're eligible to sit for your oral boards. Basically, you sit in front of a panel of, 1 to 3 surgeons, and then they just grill you on, certain questions just to make sure that they feel you're a safe general surgeon. So I was there for 2 months and change. So on the George H.W. Bush, and it was a great experience. I think the highlight of my Navy career is the fact I got to land and take off on the aircraft carrier, which is pretty pretty sweet.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It wasn't in a jet though. It was a propeller plane. And you sit, it's weird because you sit backwards, like you face the rear of the plane. And so imagine when you're like
a roller coaster.
Yeah. So imagine you're landing and you go from like 160 to 0 miles per hour in 5 seconds. Yeah. So
I can't imagine. How do you imagine that?
Yeah. That's crazy. And then the same thing for the takeoff. Imagine from 0 to 160 in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Takeoff is actually scarier than the landing because when you're coming off the runway, there's a period of time when the tail drops. And so, they're rocking you back, forward. Well, I'm going backward because you're facing the rear of the plane, and then the bottom end drops. And so it's just like
that's wild.
It's like a scary roller coaster.
Yeah.
And then after that, 10 seconds after that, the plane starts to, stabilize out. I took a picture one time of my face when I was like during the takeoff, and it wasn't a very pleasant looking face.
Yeah. So there's a couple things you referenced in there I want to go back to, but what's your response? So you're a general surgeon now.
Yes.
But is that what you were then?
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So that was what you were when you were on the bush.
Yeah.
What was what's a typical day look like? Cause I get that question about what Drake's doing every day. And he doesn't do a great job of describing that. But it'd be more interesting, I think, to hear. So people want to know what our military people do. Like when you're out on the ship.
So I'm very unique in terms of the Navy because of what I do. I'm a general surgeon, right? And I did medical school for 4 years. I did a general surgery residency for 5 years. So I have a very specific skill set, what I'm there for, right? I'm there just, in case emergency, break glass.
Right.
Someone needs a surgical emergency, that's why I'm there. That being said, my day is way different because I do have a very specific role that I play. But my best description of what life, at least for me on the aircraft carrier is like Groundhog's Day. Like it's the same thing over and over again. I wake up every morning at 5 o'clock, wake up, shower, shave. I'm in the wardroom for breakfast around 5:30. I'm in my office at 6. 6 to 6:30-ish. I call my wife because one of the nice things about being in medical, because if I have to call for a medevac or if I need to call for, I need a consult, say I have like a urologic emergency, I'm not a urologist. So I call, or OB, I get the call to get a phone consult. So I have access to a phone, so it's great. So I call my wife from like 6:30, but it was like 1 o'clock here in the States. So she was happy, but she also wasn't too happy because I'd wake her up. And then from 6:30 to like 7, we'd have our department meetings. And then from 7 to about 11-ish is when we would see clinic. But we had a family practice doctor and we had a nurse practitioner. So basically it was like, your typical, family doctor, urgent care kind of stuff. Once in a while, if someone had like a little cyst or a little bump that needed excised, I would supervise the corpsman to do that. But that was basically from 7 to 11. And then from 11 to 12:30, I would do a long lunch. 12:30 to 1:30 to 2, I'd take a nap. And then from like 3 to 5, I'd work out. And then I'd be back in for dinner on 5:36. And then I'd sit in my office again from 6 to 7 in case like there were some evening patients that needed to come in. But again, it was nothing I would take care of. And then I was probably playing Xbox from like 8 to 10.
Okay. Now we're getting to
and
the good stuff.
And then 10 to 5, I would go back to bed again and wake up over and over again. The only difference is Sunday, we would have like brunch. And, it's made to order waffles. And who wouldn't want made to order waffles on a Sunday?
So like spritzers and all that. I'm sure it was very.
Oh yes, it was very very posh.
Yeah, very posh.
Yeah, very posh.
So they almost never probably had to break the glass, right?
No,
like
I did. So the 2 months and change I was there, I did 3 operations. I did an inguinal hernia, I did a gallbladder, and then there was a sailor who decided to, swallow a whole sausage, didn't mind chewing it. So he had a food impaction that I had to get that out. So that was it. That was my emergency. But it's very stressful. If I had to do surgery, I had to go, I had to go up to the tower to talk to the captain.
Okay.
And that's just intimidating in itself. I mean, you're in this dark room and, everyone's just focusing, especially when I was there, because, they receive, jets are taking off, landing all the time.
Yeah.
And, when they're receiving jets, they have to be, or whatever they're doing, they're all constantly maneuvering. And I would like to think that if I'm doing surgery, they're going to at least try to keep the the carrier still for a period of time.
Yeah.
So I had to have clearance. I had to
geez, I never thought of
I had to make
that.
sure that, because I actually had that question. I was like, does this patient really need to have surgery? I'm like, yes, sir. This patient has, acute inflammation of gallbladder, it needs operation, no doubt. And so they're like, okay. So, they actually have to put a hold on certain operations if I'm going to be taking someone to surgery, which is kind of crazy. But it's very intimidating because like you're in this dark room and everyone's kind of staring at you. I mean, I feel like, you don't fit in. Like everyone's like, who's this guy?
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
it's crazy.
Yeah. It's that same idea. Break glass in case of emergency.
Yeah.
If you're involved, something's not going well for somebody.
And the crazy thing is there's a chain of command, right? Any military structure, there's a chain of command. So God forbid if the commanding officer, the CO goes down, then there's the executive officer, the XO, they take over. And then there's a whole hierarchy. I have no one to take my place. So if something, God forbid, happens to the surgeon on a carrier or any vessel, you're combat ineffective. You can't function. And so, that's really frustrating because like there were opportunities. Like for example, there was a time when there was like a British ship that was kind of in our vicinity, and they're offering, hey, anyone who want to take tours on this British vessel? I'm like, heck yeah, I'm going to go. I'm like, sorry, Doc, you can't go. You gotta stay on the boat. So I'm the only person there's no backup for. So it's a pain. So God forbid if something happens to the surgeon, they'll have to like rush flight someone else, and that can take several days.
Yeah.
But even for like the anesthesiologist, we had a CRNA. If he went down, then it would be like the oral surgeon, because apparently the oral surgeon for a month or so during their training, they get like anesthesia exposure. So even like the anesthesia has a backup, but there's no backup for me.
Wow.
So that's kind of one of the craziest things.
Yeah. That's a big job. I mean, obviously what you do for a living is a big job anyways. I mean, pretty much every time that you're engaged in work, somebody's life is extremely affected. And his life or death is a thing often, right? I suppose. Yeah,
typical. I mean, I we'll be trying to get together to go out to dinner or go like, hey, let's meet up to train. And then I'll call you last minute. Like, hey man, I can't go. I have to, I got to go do emergency surgery. So it happens. I mean, it's a part of the lifestyle, and that's, kind of what I accepted when I started this journey years and years ago.
Yeah. Was that part of like, how did you come about deciding to be a doctor? I mean, is that like a family thing, or is that like you just decide you're like, oh no,
the funny story I always like to tell people is like, I knew I wanted to be a surgeon when I was 6 or 7. Then everyone's like, really? Wow, that's kind of cool. I'm like,
that is kind of cool.
Well, that's because my dad told me at that time that, hey, you're going to be a surgeon. I'm like, all right, yes, sir. Roger that. I'm going to be a surgeon. And I lived that way for the longest time. They kind of kept me on the straight and narrow. They made sure I studied all the time. And, I very limited. I had a strict curfew, not allowed to date, do anything like that. And so, it was kind of towing the line, because that's how we were raised back in the day, right? So, first generation immigrants, especially, not to throw any stereotypes, but, Filipino families, they are very big into status, right? So when they're playing golf or tennis or mahjong, there's always a conversation of, oh, hey, little Timmy, he's a lawyer. Oh yeah, well, Billy, he's an engineer and he works for GM. And so there was definitely kind of a status that, you would like, you work your tail off so that your kids can have a good life, a good career. And so I was definitely kind of a product of that time, growing up. And, and I've always wanted to, I was that kid who followed my dad around the hospital on rounds when I was growing up, and I loved to see his interaction with patients. And, we were in a small town. We lived in this town of like 15,000 people. So everyone knows everyone in my town. My dad was the town surgeon. And so when in school or anyone I bump into, it was like, oh man, thank your dad for me. Like he saved my grandmother's life and things like that. And it leaves an impression on you. Like, oh wow, my dad's he's a badass. Like, wow, I didn't realize he's so important. And just like any kid, you want to emulate your dad. So, that was always the goal, and then, I had to find that road myself. I mean, that's always what my parents intended for me. And then you find your own path, right? So my path, where I decided that's what I wanted to do, I think it was an undergrad. And early in undergrad, you're 18, 19, you have no stresses in the world. I mean, all you have to do is really study and, go to school classes. And, I was always a decent student, I was a straight A student in high school, but, undergrad is a different beast. Yeah. And so, I was a struggling A-B student, probably more of the, latter. And it's very competitive to get medical school.
Sure.
And everyone, you're in class with is pre-med, and it's very stressful. And so I remember having a talk with my dad, and it's like, I don't know if I can do this. This is really competitive, and my grades aren't like they were in high school. And I think the best thing my dad said is like, you know what, whatever makes you happy. Like I'm fine with that. And that meant a lot, especially for an 18, 19-year-old who feel like you have the weight on your shoulders to, carry out what you think is your parents' dream for you.
Yeah.
But the thing, is I found that path on my own because I still volunteered at hospitals and I still got to see the great things that doctors do, and that motivated me. And then I remember too, the summer between my freshman and sophomore year is really instrumental because I think that was the time where I decided, this is why I want to do it. I was volunteering at the hospital back home where my dad worked, and I was taking a patient, from, she's being discharged. So I was taking the patient from, the hospital floor to her car so that she can go home. And, this lady was raving about her doctor, and she's like, oh, he's the best. And, I trust him in my life, and he's the greatest doctor ever. And she's like, man, but you really remind me of him. Like he's a great guy. And for some reason, like your demeanor and everything you do is very similar to him. Like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, who's your doctor? Who's your surgeon? She's like, oh, it's Dr. Canos is my surgeon. And I didn't say anything. I didn't, just because it kind of struck me. That, maybe this is my path. Maybe it is something that I can be good at. I can succeed at, that I do have a passion for. It was kind of ingrained with me. Maybe I just come from, good genes, good stock. But ultimately, there's something about my, how I treat people that makes them feel comfortable to talk to me, makes them feel open to trust me. So, that kind of got me motivated, and the rest is history. That was kind of how I decided that, yep, I am on the right path, and this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
That's awesome, because that's a big job.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it's a lot of sacrifice.
Of all the sacrifice at the beginning and ongoing, mm-hmm. like that, like you're always going to have some way that they are connected to you, that mm-hmm. they need you for something to come in and do mm-hmm. a very particular task, mm-hmm. which the timing of you getting there is important. And then what you do once you get there is really important.
Yeah.
Right?
And then also too, like I said, it's the trust, right? I mean, I'm basically a complete stranger to the person that I'm talking to.
Yeah. They
don't know me from anyone. And, surgery is a big deal. It's a very traumatic event. And just the fact that they're going to trust me to take out their gallbladder, take out their appendix, take out their colon cancer. So, I really take a lot of pride in the fact that, I'll take my time. I don't care if I'm talking to you for half hour, 45 minutes. I want to make sure that you feel comfortable that, one, exactly why you're seeing me, what's the indication, why are you seeing a surgeon? And number two, exactly what kind of operation I'm doing. Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you, am I going to be able to do it laparoscopic with a camera and small instruments and small incisions, or if I have to make a big incision? And I'm going to tell you, listen, there are risks involved, and A, B, and C, these are the risks, because, ultimately I want them comfortable. Patients always have the final say whether or not they want treatment or not. You can always say, no, I'm just going to watch this, or no, mm-hmm. I want to see someone else. That's fine. You don't hurt my feelings. Only thing I can do, which I try to be the best at, is just give you all the information that I know. And hopefully, you take that information and you trust my recommendations, and you trust me that you're going to put your life in my hands, that you want to, go forward. So I think to me, that's the challenge of surgery, is the relationship, is the trust that you have to build to the patient. The technical aspect of it, yes, it takes time to get there, but that's trainable, mm-hmm. right? I mean, I teach residents, and I have a passion. I love teaching my residents. But ultimately, what I hope that to take from me is when they're watching me talk to patients, when they're watching me how I interact with patients on rounds, they kind of get that feeling that, I care about this person. Mm-hmm. You're just not you're not someone I'm making a living off of. You're truly someone that, however good or bad the outcome goes, that means a lot to me, and I take it to heart how things turn out.
That's awesome. So we know we have a common hobby, right?
Hobby.
It's how we met.
It's like a life more. It's not a thing.
It has a little bit of a lifestyle to it. So let's speak to how you find balance with like such a big job and such a big other lifestyle thing. Yeah. And, oh, by the way, let's not forget that we have a life at home with with 3 people that are extremely
absolutely
extremely reliant upon you.
Balance is probably one of the hardest things to do, right?
Yeah.
Balance in your professional life, balance in the things in your life that bring you. Your family obviously is your anchor, your cornerstone that keeps you grounded. But then you also have something too that's your personal fulfillment. So for me, there's those 3 things, right? You train martial arts for a long time, and it's hard to describe, but there's something about martial arts that really culminates, really collectively, it almost kind of encompasses and really makes everything else in your life make sense. If that, if you're understanding. So, I've done different martial arts throughout my life, and we do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu together. And there's something about just the mental challenges in addition to the physical challenge that everything relates. How I approach Jiu Jitsu is the same way that I approach surgery, is the same way I approach family, and it's kind of hard to describe unless you do it, right? Anytime you're in a stressful situation, martial arts trains you, your jiu-jitsu, it trains you to accept being uncomfortable, accept that challenge, accept that it's not going to be it's going to be a win situation. Actually, most time it's going to be a no-win situation. You're probably going to lose very badly, but you put things in perspective and you learn about it and you make yourself better, and you're constantly trying to push and push and push to do better. It's almost an unattainable goal, but you're always pushing yourself to do better. Get that next level, get that next peak. Surgery the same way. I don't feel like I'm a seasoned surgeon and I'm the best at what I do. No, I think I can do better. Just like after we roll, I'm talking to you about it. You know what? I should have grabbed your pant leg there. I should have put a hook in. I should have swept you. Same thing with surgery. Now, that was a little bit of a challenging case. What if I would have done this? What if I would have put my hands here? What if I would have attracted here? I'm constantly pushing myself. And, especially working with residents, I push myself even more because, again, not only do I want to be a great surgeon, I also want to be a great teacher. And so, not only do I feel like I'm constantly trying to refine my technique to be a better surgeon, but I'm also trying to constantly refine myself in terms of how I teach my residents to do things so that they can understand it. Just like when we talk, how I verbalize, all right, dude, if you want to do this sweep, your leg has to be here. You have to position your hips here. Your arm has to be here. And that's kind of the same thing when I teach surgery. It's like, okay, make sure your arms are relaxed. Make sure your hand is here. Make sure when you're moving, you move it this way and you move everything in one motion. You don't, nothing choppy. Make sure everything is always centered.
So do you feel like there's like kind of a common baseline of how you like the process, if you will, for instructing?
Absolutely.
Because you teach martial arts as well. You teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at least once a week. And then also besides that, when we have other opportunities, you're a higher rank guy. So people are looking up to you. Like obviously you're being looked up to as being in charge of the residents, but you're also being looked at in being in charge, not in charge all the time, but just somebody that's a higher rank, has been doing this for a while and takes it very serious. So you feel like that's like, hey, I basically apply the same rules.
It is.
The same setup for both of these things. Cause one's really serious and the other, hopefully you never have to use it, but it could be very serious. You could really hurt somebody or get hurt.
Well, when we roll together, right? What is it always about? It's about a rhythm. It's about a flow. It's about a pattern. And that's kind of similar with surgery when I teach. It's like it's about a rhythm. It's with breath. It's your movement. Your movements aren't jerky. It's small movements. It's small adjustments. And that's like jiu-jitsu. It's perfect. That's exactly what jiu-jitsu is. Jiu-jitsu is about small adjustments, trying to find the space to go into so that you can get out of a tough situation. Surgery is no different. You're trying to do micro adjustment, micro movements to get to a plane where you can dissect out the disease better. It's everything to me is just interconnected, and that's why jiu-jitsu is where I found that the passion I found for martial arts, but it really can be applied to any martial art. Really, it's just you got to find the balance, and you have to find sort of that harmony where one thing affects everything in your life, and it's almost like one and the same. I can talk to you the same passion and the same approach to surgery as I do with jiu-jitsu. So again, that's how I balance work and sort of the passion I have with training is because they're both, once they're in harmony, my life seems simple. Like life makes sense. Yeah, I can apply anything that I do with my work, and I can apply really anything I can do with jiu-jitsu. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Family's a little harder. I can't treat family for the same way. Family's a little more challenging. But again, I think the family part for me is just the blessing about it, because again, they're my anchor, they're my rock. So no matter, Amanda, my wife, is very supportive of me, and she knows that, I love my work and I can be called away and taken away from, family dinners, date nights and things like that. And she's understanding and she's very supportive. And she knows that when I do have those small windows of opportunity to be with the family, then I'm going to be there, and I'm committed to being there, and my mind is there while I'm there. But she also knows that at a moment's notice, I potentially can be taken away. So, super important to have that balance.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very understanding wife, right? Mm-hmm. And that's part of, I suppose, when you guys got married, that's part of she's accepting that, but that's that's a big deal to say that I'm signing on. I mean, the Navy thing to begin with at the beginning, I don't know how long you guys were married before that, but going away on the ship, that's hard. A big commitment.
Yeah, that was definitely,
at the very least, you're fairly newly married, right?
Like I said,
that's a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, again, anytime, you're away from your family for an extended period of time is tough. It totally is. Yeah. I'd much rather be it on this side as a surgeon, because, knock on wood, for the most part, I'm not in an active war zone.
Yeah. So then the other thing is, when you're being away from things you love, let's talk about a couple things. One would be COVID. Mm-hmm. So you got it. Yeah. And maybe talk a little bit about that, but then that took you away from
everything.
Yeah. You're not allowed to be around your family, not allowed to be around work, and not allowed to do jiu-jitsu. Yeah. So literally put you in a vacuum where you're away from all of it.
Yeah. Actually, March 18th. So March 18th was my 1 year anniversary of when I got COVID. And that was a crazy time. That was probably kind of the rock bottom of my life. And I remember it very vividly, because March 18th was a Wednesday. I was doing great. I woke up. I was in great mood. I always have a resident clinic every morning on Wednesday, and, brought donuts, hanging out, just, smoking and joking with the residents. We had some meetings in the afternoon. I was feeling fine. And then I remember really vividly at 4:00 was when I came home. It hit me where I just had fevers and chills. It just felt really just run down. And I just wasn't getting any better. So I called my office and, hey, Darcy's my work wife. She's my office manager. Besides my Amanda, she runs the other half of my life. And I was like, Darcy, you got to cancel everything on Thursday. I'm just not feeling well. Reschedule my patients, reschedule my, my clinic and everything like that. And, wasn't getting any better. And through the course of 5 days, right. So I got sick on a Wednesday, and then, through the weekend, I started, fevers wouldn't break, just constant fevers, constant rundown. I was getting to the point where I was getting kind of lightheaded, and I started having difficulty breathing. My chest was tight, and I couldn't sleep on my back. I would wake up in the middle of the night, stop breathing, because I just had that hard time breathing.
And we should establish, so anybody that isn't familiar with jiu-jitsu, if you do jiu-jitsu, you're in shape.
Yeah,
we're not talking about somebody that's not in shape. You're in probably in your age group, top 10% for sure.
Yeah. I mean, we have great, our gas tanks are amazing when we roll. Yeah. Because we do 5 minute, rounds, and the 5 minute rounds, I mean, you're at 100% all the time.
Yeah. And 5 minutes of you and another large human being, usually larger than you in our case, that's not wanting you to do the things to them that you are trying to do to you.
Yeah, we're trying to kill each other.
You're trying to kill your friends.
Yeah, 5 minutes of just max effort all around. So yeah, and kind of going back as a side, I mean, jiu-jitsu is one of those things that you do it because I want to get in better shape. And then the more you get addicted to jiu-jitsu, it's you know what? I want to be better in shape to do jiu-jitsu. So in addition to rolling and training, I'm going to do cardio. I'm going to do weights. So I felt I was in great shape, but yeah, it was tough. I mean, it was scary. I almost didn't want to go to sleep because I had that sensation, if I close my eyes, I want to stop breathing and it's going to wake me up. And then I found out wow. I was self-proning myself. Yeah. And I would sleep in my stomach, which, it's called, self-proning. So it just kind of helps you, aerate your lungs and stuff better. It's more critical care than I care to get into, but, it was tough. And so, and the challenging thing, and I'm in a way better place mentally now than I probably was, a year ago, is because when I got sick is when I think DeWine, not that far ahead, maybe a week or so, we kind of started closing things down, and COVID was in the news, but we're on our little bubble of Toledo. Like, oh, is this really going to reach us or not?
Right.
And the challenge is no one had answers. So I knew something was wrong. Something was not right. This is not your typical flu. This is not like your typical like pneumonia. Like something is literally going wrong. And, when I called the hotline, they had the questions they asked were appropriate at the time with the knowledge that they knew at that time. Nowadays, it's way different. There's a lot more of, that clinical suspicion of, oh, okay, you have COVID, you have this, and this. Before it was, did you travel and did you have any contact? And that was it. And so, people didn't think much of it. And so 5 days went by, and I was kind of like my rock bottom where, I wasn't feeling better. And then under the advisement of a colleague of mine, she's like, hey, once you go to the ER, let's get you tested. And even still, when I went to the ER, they weren't too concerned with me. Mm-hmm. And until they got my chest x-ray and they saw that I had bilateral pneumonia. So both my lungs were just not good at all. And the scary part at that time is the way we treat it is way different now than it was back then. There really wasn't a lot of strategies. We're just kind of shooting from the hip how we took care of it. Yeah. And, if it ever got to the point where you're intubated, right, you needed a machine to help you breathe, it's pretty much game over. There was not much coming back from that. And I remember very vividly that they're like, you know what, even though you don't look that bad, your x-ray is very concerning to us. We think you should come in the hospital. And right there, because my wife wasn't even allowed to be in the same room. We were actually separated. She was in one room, kind of on lockdown. I was in another room. So even the time when I was in the ER being evaluated was scary because I couldn't even see my wife. And in the thought that I was going to be isolated, I'm not going to have any family members, and I'm probably going to die if this progresses. In my mind, I'm like, I'm just going to go home and die. I'm okay with that. So, yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. It was a
dark moment.
It is. And it's probably the lowest. And you've known me for, a short period of time, but you know me, I'm a very upbeat guy.
Yeah, for sure.
There's not a lot of things that, if anything,
that's not something I can imagine
you
telling yourself.
Yeah. It was horrible. So, two of my best friends still, who I met in the Navy, they're surgeons, and we text each other. They're like, hey man, you should go on, at the time, again, all the literature and studies were still new. There was still a lot of speculation on what's going to work. They're like, you should go on the hydroxychloroquine, which, a very controversial drug. So it was a cocktail. It was hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and zinc. And so I'm like, okay, well, dude, I'm ready to throw a Hail Mary. Like, this is scary. I feel like this is not going to go well. Let me just see. So I, was able to talk to a colleague, and she was able to prescribe me that cocktail. And, fine. I'm a surgeon. I'm in medicine. Yes, I believe in evidence-based, right? We do studies to kind of confirm, yes, this is the appropriate treatment. And I know a lot of things out there that was supporting that treatment of using that anti-malarial was, very anecdotal. But I will say that 2 days into that cocktail, it's a 5-day course, like my fever's broke and I could start breathing again. And then
that's meaningful.
Yeah. And then at least then when I got to that end, that 5-day course, I was feeling great. I mean, it was significant 180 improvement. So again, I know a lot of literature and stuff was, not very supportive of it, but all I can speak of is my experience. And, I think, within 2 weeks after I got better, I got my lungs back in the sense that I was like pushing myself again, doing my cardio. And then another week and a half after my lungs came back, my legs came back. So, shape wise, and, again, I think I'm hoping I'm young-ish, I'm kind of healthy-ish, that kind of helped me.
So for sure. Right.
But the challenge, so that was always the scary part. And then, like you said, the isolation of it. So it took me 6 weeks to have, so at the time, in order to be cleared to, get out of your own quarantine to go back to work, especially for me being with patients, I had to have two negative tests. And it took 8 of them to get my 2 negative tests so that I can go back to work.
Wow.
So I don't.
8?
8 tests. So about 8 weeks, 8 tests. And it took 6 to 8 weeks around there. So the challenge is, obviously I don't want to get my family sick. And I don't know how, thank the Lord that they didn't, because we tried to isolate ourselves, but my wife's trying to take care of me and she's trying to tend to the kids. So, thank God that she didn't get sick. So, I'm basically either in the basement or in my office at home by myself, just hanging out. I can hear the kids, and, it's really frustrating because, Sophie's telling Amanda, like, I miss being able to hug dad. Like I want to give dad a hug, and that's, you know, anything like that, it's going to crush you.
Yeah.
So you have no contact really with your family. You know, I really didn't have any contact with anyone at work. And then you're just sitting there isolated, you know, that's all you did. I mean, it's every day I wake up, I'd work out, and then I just sit in my office the whole day, you know, do whatever I can. I mean, thank God there were like meetings and stuff I can do through Zoom that kind of occupied my time, but it was tough. Yeah. And then, you know, when I finally did get my negative tests and when things started opening up, so even in May, April, June is when they started closing down elective cases. So not emergency cases. So if you have a hernia that needs to be fixed, that's elective cases. So there was nothing really for me to do. But even when things opened up in July, when I was able to go back to work, there was a lot of anxiety because for the longest time, you know, I didn't know how people were going to accept me back in the hospital. You know, are people going to be freaked out because I was sick and, you know, they don't want to be around me?
Yeah.
You know, they're, you know,
leper.
Yeah, exactly. Well, for the longest time, and, you know, you can attest to this, you know, at that period of time when I got sick, if you would ask anybody, hey man, do you know anyone who has COVID? And you're going to say, yeah, I know a guy. And like for a lot of social circles, I was that guy.
Yeah. For like, my circle, you were that guy.
There were many circles. Every social circle that I know and my wife knows, and even you knew, and you know a lot of people. I was that one guy. And that to me was crazy to think about that. Yeah. You know, very short list. So it was just a lot of anxiety about how I was going to be received. You know, the OR staff. Are they going to be accepting of me to come back? Are my residents going to feel safe to, you know, for me to work with them? So that was a lot. That was tough, you know, and then, you know, so that was just the emotional anguish was tough. And I think slowly I was getting better in August. And then in August, that's when I broke my ankle.
So that's what I kind of wanted to pivot into that. Yeah. So one of the things I get as a martial artist with what's considered to be a kind of a big job, and you're the same, like you kind of have a big job and people say, well, what, you know, A, you're getting older. Why are you doing that? And B, like, how do you, like, what is your purpose? Because I know I have a very distinct purpose with my martial arts. Like I know how I feel about that, but you came back to Jiu Jitsu when you could, and then pretty short order from there, you broke your ankle, which isn't the first time you've ever been hurt. Like if we're doing that type of sport, you're getting hurt.
You expect an injury.
It's just part of the process.
Yeah, any type of combat sport.
But why do you keep coming back to it? Like, because I get that question, like, well, yeah, you're walking a little funny. Yeah, well, this happened. I had a 300-pound dude on me today. Yeah. You know, and people are like, what do you mean? Like, they don't put you in with the other old people, like, and they don't put you with people your size. And so, yeah, like we're literally grappling on some level for our lives, although with our friends, with people that are sometimes twice our size or sometimes usually half our age or my age, at least.
I mean, just like anything else, it's when you find an art, a pastime, a hobby that helps you like make sense of life. If that you know, that's the best way to say it.
Makes sense to me.
You don't want to step away from it. Ultimately, yes, I'm not going to be, I'm not a competitor, right? You know, we have no illusions. We're not going to be, gold medalists, world champs in jiu-jitsu. I'm accepting of that. But what I do have a passion for and I do want to do down the road is I would like to teach. I'm at a level where I know like a small skill set of techniques that I can teach, but I want to be like Dante. I want to be like the guys who inspired me to step on the mats in the first place. I want to be like that, sort of be that mentor, be that inspiration for someone to, again, every day was always reasons why we can take a break. Long day at work. I'm tired, didn't sleep last night. I didn't get a chance to eat lunch. There's always excuses. But to someone to see us roll and have the enthusiasm, we're smiling, we're having a great time, to motivate them. Like, you know what? Yeah, I didn't feel like training, but Dan's going to be there. Doc's going to be there. Yeah, this is going to be a fun class. I'm going to do that. So I enjoy it. Injuries happen. You do any type of physical sport, combat sport, you're going to have injury. Most of the time, it's usually what you tweak your shoulder, you tweak your knee, maybe broken finger, broken toe. But I broke my ankle, which in the jiu-jitsu world, surprisingly, is not that common. You don't see long bone injuries in jiu-jitsu. And that was just a freak accident where, someone was taking me down and I just planted my foot wrong and his shin landed on my ankle. And, next thing I know, I felt my ankle 90 degrees in a direction that it doesn't want to be. And that was tough because I feel like, man, I just got over COVID. Like physically, I'm finally back to where I was before COVID. Mentally, I'm in a good space because I'm back to work, right? I'm back to work. I feel like people are accepting me again, almost to the point like, oh, they miss me.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you're doing.
You were missed for sure.
And so like, man, I'm in a good space. Physically, I'm back in a good space. And then to have this another little like roadblock, a stepping stone or whatever, you just kind of kill you again. So that was tough. That was another maybe 2.5 weeks while I was out of commission. I couldn't do anything.
Right.
I couldn't operate, obviously. Now, one thing that I do is, I do robotic surgery. So laparoscopic surgery with a robotic platform. It's not like I push a button and walk away. No, I still operate. I still control the functions of my instruments, but I can do it at a console, about 10 feet away from the patient in a seated position. So that was nice because the vast majority of my cases, I can sit down and I can still operate. I have residents to make the incisions, put the ports in and things like that. And then, my injury didn't hinder me for the bulk of my practice, which is nice. But yeah, it's just two pretty major events to happen in 1 year is tough. And, it took me several months to kind of mentally, physically, physical is not a problem. We train now regularly all the time. Physically, I'm back. My ankle's strong again. I'm getting, dusting the rust off of my technique and, getting my lungs and my legs back. But just mentally, like you're scared, right? You just don't want to I want to train. I love training, but let me go a little slow.
You're probably more observant to things you should have been more observant to all along. Mm-hmm. Like I feel the same way. I'm very... I love the art of jiu-jitsu and the practice. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, you're coming up on doing a competition. I'm like, the probability of me getting hurt in a competition seems way higher than than rolling with you. I'm just not getting hurt rolling with you. Like, unless something really weird happens.
Yeah, but we're very conscious about how our body positions and how much force. I think part of my mental road to rehab is, I don't want to be scared anymore.
Yeah.
Like I want to live my life again. I want to be confident of things that I do. I want to push myself. Right. I feel like, I think one of the things that I became to light being sick and then being injured is I'm very comfortable being comfortable. And if things seem like it's going to be a little bit of work, or how about even things that I may not be successful at, the easy road to take is like, if I don't do it, then I don't have to worry about it because, failure is way harder. It's not
going to happen in your daily life.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Your normal.
But even
life.
Anything you do, you're going to have successes. You're going to have things that maybe not turn out as you would like them. But, the easy road is if I just don't pursue something, then, I don't have to worry about ever being disappointed. I know it's kind of a weird, bad way to say it, but I'm trying to move past that. I'm trying to push myself to get out of that comfort zone and do things that I'm not comfortable with because, again, I think that's what came to light in this last year is I was way too comfortable. And you know what? You only live once, right?
That's it.
God willing, God blessing that I was able to make it through the year, but you only leave once. I'm not going to be scared anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to do different things. I'm not going to compete all the time because, obviously, work and life and family stuff, but, I'm not going to have that I don't know, I'm not that good yet, or I don't know how I'll do and, worry about those things. And I'm just going to do it. And I'm going to take those lessons that I learned. And if I lose, then fine. I'm there to learn. There's something that I can improve on so that doesn't happen again. But I guess the flip side is what if I do well? And what if I win?
Well, no matter what, you're winning. You showing up is winning from my perspective. I think, coming back from COVID, coming back from having a big job, having a lot of responsibility and having a place that's, the neat thing about whether we're on the mat together or you're with somebody else in a competition, like you're there, you're present. Like, there is no way that you can be anywhere else. Like you could hurt yourself, get hurt, or hurt someone else, and none of those things are happening. So we know that you're very present when you're with.
Oh, you're locked on.
When you're in
absolutely.
There. And that's probably the biggest blessing in my mind to the martial arts is that no matter what happened, and I was groomed in a karate style with Sensei Hertzellers, but we would always bow in. And I always I think he explained it one time and I just took to it. You have all these responsibilities, and when you bow, they just kind of fall off.
Yeah.
You leave them at the door, and if you decide to pick them back up and take them back out with you, that's great. And sometimes you don't have to. Like there might have been something you're worried about that you hadn't thought of in that whole hour, and now we'll just not worry about. I'm not going to pick that one up and bring it with me.
It's
so
that
that's
being
kinda
locked
cool.
on, and it's funny because I was talking to my wife about it the other day, and I don't know if she really appreciated the comment, but I was like, sweetie, like it doesn't matter how bad of a day that I have. There are two things that will immediately make me feel better. One is operating, one is doing my job in surgery, and then number two is doing jiu-jitsu. Last week, whatever, had some tough meetings. It was a challenging day, and I was doing kind of a laparoscopic skills lab, and just the fact that I was engaged myself, like I was locked on, like all that stress, all that just anxiety just melted away, and I was like in the moment of just, okay, I'm just practicing, just getting my hands loose, just practicing, getting practice, and it's just, you realize like, God, I love this.
Yeah.
Like, God, this is where I'm myself, I'm me, I'm happy, I'm like in the zone, and the same thing on the mat, You can go in any type of day of the training and you have anxiety because, oh man, who am I going to roll with? Am I going to get crushed? And then once you're there, once that buzzer goes off and you slap and you bump fist and like it's on, it's like the best feeling in the world. I mean, even to get crushed, the fact that you're like engaged and your mind is just focused on, one purpose, one goal. It's just so, so relieving and so just, mentally fulfilling. And that's
a big deal.
I don't know. And I guess, call me an adrenaline junkie in that sense, but like, it's just amazing. Like those two things I have found that no matter how I'm feeling, almost instantaneously when I'm locked on, it's like, wow. Yeah. It's like, I'm in my place. I'm in my element. I can't be beat. You can't break me.
Right.
I'm here in the moment.
That's awesome. Good, man. Well, thanks for your time. I appreciate our time goes pretty quick.
Yeah.
We start talking about all the things we love, it's pretty cool. So I appreciate your time. I know how busy you are.
No, absolutely. And again, I think, I think one of the best gifts of jiu-jitsu is I get to meet great people, right? Yeah. If it wasn't for training, we never would have met.
That's right.
We never would have become like, great friends.
Never would have been blessed with knowing that. That's awesome. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Anytime, man.
We'll talk soon, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
See you in the mats.
All righty.
DeVerna offers products and services using the following business names: Creative Financial Partners, Insurance and Financial Services, Ameritas Investment Company, LLC, AIC, member FINRA, SIPC, Security Investments, Ameritas Advisory Services, AAS Investment Advisory Services, AIC and AAS are not affiliated with Creative Financial Partners. Products and services are limited to residents of states where the representative is registered. This is not an offer of securities in any jurisdiction, nor is it specifically directed to a resident of any jurisdiction. As with any security, request a prospectus from a representative. Read it carefully before you invest or send money. A representative will contact you to provide requested information. Representatives of AIC and AAS do not provide legal or tax advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney regarding the situation.
Thanks for watching.